I'm Bessie Franklin, 73 years old, and I've always believed that family comes first. That belief cost me everything I thought I knew about the people I loved most. What started as planning my granddaughter's sweet 16 party turned into the most devastating betrayal I've ever experienced, and by the time I was done responding to it, let's just say some lessons are more expensive than others. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was watering my African violets on the kitchen windowsill. Madison's voice was bright and bubbly, the way it always got when she wanted something from me. "Grandma Bessie, I have the most amazing news about my sweet 16. I smiled, setting down my watering can. Madison was my son Robert's daughter, my only grandchild, and the light of my life for the past 16 years. Ever since her mother Patricia had walked out when Madison was 7, I'd stepped in to fill that maternal void. School plays, dance recitals, sleepovers, shopping trips for homecoming dresses. I'd been there for all of it. "Tell me everything, sweetheart," I said, settling into my favorite chair by the window. "Okay, so you know how Dad said I could have whatever kind of party I wanted. Well, I've been planning with Savannah and her mom, and we want to do this incredible themed party at the Riverside Country Club. It's going to be absolutely perfect, Grandma. Like movie-level perfect." My heart swelled with pride. Madison deserved the world, and I'd spent years making sure she got it. The college fund I'd been building for her since she was born had grown to over $200,000, carefully invested and nurtured through decades of modest living and smart financial choices. But a sweet 16 party was a once-in-a-lifetime celebration, and if my granddaughter wanted the stars, I'd find a way to give them to her. "That sounds wonderful, honey. What can Grandma do to help make it special?" There was a pause, and when Madison spoke again, her voice had shifted slightly, less bubbly, more calculated. "Well, actually, that's kind of why I'm calling. Dad said you'd want to be involved in the planning, but honestly, Grandma, I was thinking this might be more of a younger crowd kind of thing." I felt a small flutter of confusion in my chest. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "I mean, like it's going to be really trendy and modern, you know? Savannah's mom is helping us plan everything, and she really gets what teenagers want these days. Plus, all my friends' grandparents usually just like send a card or whatever. Having you there might make it feel less, I don't know, less cool." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared out at my garden, where the roses I'd planted when Madison was born were just beginning to bloom for the season. "Madison, are you saying you don't want me at your party?" "It's not that I don't want you there exactly. It's just, you're 73, Grandma. This party is going to have a DJ and dancing, and all these Instagram-worthy photo setups. It's going to be very current, and let's be honest, you're kind of not." I closed my eyes, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. "I see, but I totally want you to help pay for it," she added quickly, as if that would soften the blow. "Dad said you have that college fund, and since I'm probably going to get scholarships anyway, maybe some of that money could go toward making my sweet 16 really special. Savannah's party cost like $40,000, and it was in all the local magazines. I want mine to be even better." I sat there in stunned silence, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder I'd hung outside my kitchen window. That bird feeder had been a gift from Madison 3 Christmases ago, painted with her own hands, with the words "For the best Grandma ever" in careful pink letters. "Grandma? Are you still there?" "I'm here," I managed. "Madison, that money is for your education. Your future college is like 4 years away, Grandma. This party is in 6 weeks. Besides, everyone knows that college is basically a scam now. Most of my friends are planning to be influencers or start their own businesses. Savannah's already making money on TikTok." I felt my hands begin to tremble, and I gripped the phone tighter. "Honey, education is important. That money represents years of saving, of planning for your future security. But what's the point of security if I'm miserable?" Madison's voice took on a whining tone I'd never heard before. "Grandma, this is literally the most important day of my teenage life. Everyone at school is going to be there. If my party isn't amazing, I'll be social suicide. Do you want me to be a laughingstock? I looked around my small but carefully maintained living room. The furniture was old but well cared for. The decorations simple but chosen with love. On every surface were framed photos of Madison throughout the years. Madison taking her first steps while holding my hands. Madison in her elementary school graduation cap, beaming beside me. Madison and me at last year's Christmas morning, both of us wearing matching pajamas I'd sewn myself. Madison, I said carefully, I've always supported you, and I always will, but I think we need to have a conversation about this in person. Why don't you come over this weekend? And we can… Grandma, I don't have time for one of your lectures. Savannah's mom is taking us to look at venues tomorrow and I need to know if you're going to help or not. This is like a yes or no question. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. This wasn't the sweet, thoughtful girl I'd raised. This was someone I didn't recognize. Someone who spoke to me like I was an inconvenience, rather than the person who'd spent the last decade of her life making sure she had everything she needed. I need some time to think about this, I said. Fine. Whatever, but just so you know, if you don't help, Dad said he'd ask you anyway. He thinks you're too soft to say no to me. She paused, and I heard muffled voices in the background. Actually, Savannah wants to know if you could not mention to anyone that you're my grandmother, if you do decide to come to the party. Her mom is kind of image conscious, and having a really old person there might affect the photo. The line went quiet, except for the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. Madison, I said slowly, did you just ask me to pretend I'm not your grandmother? It's not like that, Grandma. It's just optics. You understand, right? You want me to be happy, don't you? I stared at the cardinal outside my window, watching as it pecked at the seeds I'd put out that morning. The same seeds I'd been faithfully filling that feeder with for 3 years, rain or shine, because Madison had asked me to take care of the birds. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. Great. So you'll transfer like $20,000 to start. Dad can give you the account information for the party planner. I'll call you back, sweetie. Okay, but don't take too long. The good venues book up fast, and I hung up the phone and sat in the sudden silence of my kitchen, surrounded by 16 years of memories and the growing realization that the little girl I'd devoted my life to had grown into someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenient ATM machine, someone who was ashamed of my age, my appearance, my very existence in her life. I walked slowly to my bedroom and opened the closet where I kept my important documents. The college fund statements were in a neat folder, organized by year, every deposit and dividend carefully recorded. $237,000, to be exact. Money I'd saved by driving my car until it barely ran, by mending clothes instead of buying new ones, by choosing generic groceries, and skipping vacations and cutting my own hair for 20 years. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying Madison's words, the casual cruelty in her voice when she suggested I hide my relationship to her, the assumption that my life's savings should fund her social status. But it wasn't just Madison's words that kept me awake. It was the growing realization that this attitude hadn't appeared overnight. I started thinking back over the past year, looking for signs I'd missed. The way Madison had stopped calling me, just to chat, only reaching out when she needed something. The way she'd started declining my invitations to our traditional Saturday shopping trips, claiming she was busy with friends. The way she'd rolled her eyes at Christmas when I'd given her the handmade photo album I'd spent months creating, filled with pictures of our adventures together, while she'd lit up over the expensive designer purse her father had bought her. I'd told myself it was normal teenage behavior, that she was growing up and naturally becoming more independent. But now I wondered if I'd been making excuses for what was actually a pattern of taking me for granted. The next morning, I called my neighbor Dorothy, who'd been my closest friend for 15 years. Dorothy was a retired teacher, sharp as a tack, and never one to sugarcoat the truth. Dorothy, I said, settling into my chair with my coffee, I need some perspective on something. I told her about Madison's call, about the party request and the suggestion that I hide my identity. Dorothy listened in silence until I finished. Bessie, she said finally, her voice gentle but firm, Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. How long has Madison been treating you like this? Like what? Like a bank account with legs. I felt my cheeks flush. That's not fair. Dorothy, she's 16. Teenagers are naturally self-centered. My granddaughter is 17, Dorothy's. Last month she spent her entire paycheck from her part-time job on a birthday present for me, because she wanted to surprise me with something special. Self-centered is normal. What Madison did to you is something else entirely. I stared out my kitchen window, watching the morning light filter through the leaves of the oak tree I'd planted when Robert was born 44 years ago. She's been through a lot with her mother leaving, and you've been the one constant in her life ever since, Dorothy. You've given her everything, Bessie. Your time, your energy, your love, your money, and now she's telling you that you're too old and too embarrassing to be seen with her at the party you're expected to fund. That's not teenage behavior. That's entitled. After I hung up with Dorothy, I sat at my kitchen table and did something I'd never done before. I made a list of every significant expense I'd covered for Madison over the past 5 years. Dance lessons, soccer fees, summer camps, a laptop for school, clothes, birthday parties for her friends, the down payment on her car. The number was staggering, over $60,000, not counting the college fund. I realized I couldn't remember the last time Madison had thanked me for any of it. It had all been presented as things I owed her, things she deserved simply for existing. My phone rang again around noon. It was Robert, Madison's father, and my son. "Mom," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of someone about to ask for a favor. "Madison told me about your conversation yesterday. I really hope you'll consider helping her out with this party." "Robert," I said carefully, "did she tell you everything about our conversation?" She said, "You seemed upset about the money, but Mom, this party is really important to her. All her friends are having these elaborate celebrations, and she doesn't want to feel left out." "What about the part where she said I was too old to attend, or where she asked me to pretend I wasn't her grandmother if I did come?" There was a pause. "Mom, you know how teenagers are. They don't always express themselves well. I'm sure she didn't mean it the way it sounded." I felt something shift inside me, a small crack in the foundation of assumptions I'd built my life on. "Robert, do you think I'm too old to be at Madison's party?" "It's not about age, Mom. It's about, well, Madison's at an age where she's very concerned about her image. Having her grandmother there might make her feel self-conscious." "I see. And you think I should pay for a party I'm not welcome to attend?" "You're always welcome, Mom. It's just, maybe you could make an appearance and then leave early. You know, show your support, but let her have her moment with her friends." I closed my eyes and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. My own son was asking me to fund my granddaughter's party, and then make myself scarce, so I wouldn't embarrass her. "Let me think about it," I said. "Don't think too long, Mom. The good venues are booking up, and Madison really has her heart set on the country club." That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a bottle of wine, poured myself a glass, and sat down to really think about my life. Not just the immediate situation with Madison and the party, but the bigger picture of who I was, and what I'd become. For the past 16 years, I'd defined myself almost entirely through my relationship with Madison. I was Grandma Bessie, the woman who never missed a recital, who always had homemade cookies waiting after school, who could be counted on for emergency babysitting, last-minute school project supplies, or a sympathetic ear after a bad day. I'd been proud of that identity, had found purpose and meaning in being indispensable to my granddaughter's life, but sitting there in my quiet living room, surrounded by photos of a girl who was now ashamed to be seen with me, I realized I'd lost myself somewhere along the way. I'd become so focused on being the perfect grandmother that I'd forgotten I was also Bessie Franklin, a woman with her own needs, her own worth, her own right to be treated with respect. I thought about my late husband Harold, who'd died 8 years ago after 42 years of marriage. Harold had always encouraged me to maintain my own friendships, my own interests, my own sense of self, but after he passed, Pouring all my energy into Madison had felt like a way to heal from the grief. Now I wondered if it had actually been a way to avoid dealing with my own life. The next morning brought another phone call, this time from someone I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Franklin, this is Patricia Chen, Savannah's mother. I believe you're Madison's grandmother." I straightened in my chair. "Yes, that's right. I wanted to reach out personally about the girls' party planning. Madison mentioned that you might be contributing financially, and I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about the vision." Something in her tone made me wary. "What kind of vision?" "Well, we're planning something really spectacular. The country club, live entertainment, professional photography, custom decorations. We want this to be the kind of event that gets featured in the society pages, really elevate these girls' profiles in the community." "And what does that have to do with me?" There was a slight pause. "Madison mentioned that you might be planning to attend, and I wanted to discuss how we could make that work with the overall aesthetic we're going for." My grip tightened on the phone. "The aesthetic? It's nothing personal, Mrs. Franklin. It's just that we're going for a very specific look and feel, young, fresh, modern. We'll have professional photographers there, and the images are going to be used for social media, and possibly some local publication. We need to be mindful of how everything appears." I felt my blood pressure rising. "Are you suggesting I would somehow damage the aesthetic of my granddaughter's party?" "Not damage, exactly. It's just, well, multi-generational events can be challenging from a visual standpoint. We want the focus to be on the girls and their bright futures, not, well, you understand." I understood perfectly. I was being told in the most diplomatic language possible that I was too old and unattractive to be seen at a party I was expected to fund. "I see," I said quietly. "And what exactly did Madison tell you about my potential contribution?" "She mentioned something about a college fund that might be redirected for this purpose. We've estimated costs at around $40,000 for the kind of event we're envisioning, though it could go higher depending on the final guest count and entertainment choices." $40,000, nearly 20% of Madison's college fund for a single party where I wouldn't even be welcome. "Mrs. Chen," I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest, "I'll need to discuss this with Madison and my son before making any decisions." "Of course, but I hope you'll keep in mind how important this is to Madison. This party will be talked about for years. It's an investment in her social future." After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone, trying to process what had just happened. Not only was my granddaughter ashamed of me, but she'd apparently been discussing my financial situation with strangers. Worse, she'd been doing it in a way that suggested my money was somehow automatically available for her use. I called Robert back. "Mom, what's up?" he answered, sounding distracted. "Robert, I just got a call from Savannah's mother about Madison's party." "Oh good. Patricia's really on top of things. She's got great ideas for making this event special. She told me the budget is $40,000. There was a Yeah, I know it sounds like a lot, but Mom, this is Madison's Sweet 16, it's a milestone, and honestly, you've got that college money just sitting there earning minimal interest. This would be a much better use of it." I felt something break inside me. A better use than her education. "Come on, Mom. Madison's smart. She'll figure out college. Maybe she'll get scholarships. Maybe she'll find a different path, but she'll only turn 16 once. And if we don't make this special for her, she'll remember that disappointment for the rest of her life." "And what about the fact that she doesn't want me at the party?" "She never said she didn't want you there. She just thinks it might be better if you kept a low profile. You could come for the first hour, take some photos with her and then head home. That way you're part of it. But the kids can still have their fun." I realized in that moment that my son saw nothing wrong with asking me to fund a party and then leave so I wouldn't embarrass his daughter. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "I need some time to think about this, Robert. Don't take too long, Mom. Patricia's already put deposits down on some vendors. Assuming you'd be on board." The line went dead, and I sat in my kitchen feeling more alone than I had since Harold died. The two people I loved most in the world had joined forces to make me feel like an ATM machine with an embarrassing human attachment. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my old friend Margaret, who lived in Florida now but had been my closest friend during Madison's early years. Bessie, Margaret's voice was warm and delighted. What a wonderful surprise. How are you, honey? I found myself crying as I told her the whole story. Margaret listened without interrupting, making small sympathetic sounds at the right moments. Oh, Bessie, she said when I finished, I'm so sorry, but I have to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. When was the last time Madison did something thoughtful for you? Not because she wanted something in return but just because she loved you? I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't. Every recent memory I had of Madison involved her asking for something or complaining about something I hadn't done right. I can't remember, I admit. And when was the last time Robert called you just to see how you were doing, not to ask for babysitting or money, or help with something? Again, I had no answer. Bessie, sweetheart, I think you've been so busy being useful to them, that they've forgotten you're a person with feelings and needs of your own. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my financial advisor, a woman named Carol who'd been managing my investments for 15 years. Carol, I said, I need to talk to you about Madison's college fund. Of course, Bessie. Are you thinking about adjusting the investment strategy? The market's been doing well, and the fund is in good shape. Actually, I'm thinking about moving the money. There was a pause. Moving it where? Are you not happy with the returns? I'm thinking about moving it into my name only, setting up a new fund that I control completely. That's certainly possible, Carol said carefully. The current fund is in your name as custodian with Madison as beneficiary. We could restructure it as a personal investment account. May I ask what's prompting this change? I told her about the party request, about Madison's attitude, about the growing realization that my granddaughter saw the money as hers by right rather than mine by creation. I see, Carol said when I finished. Bessie, I've seen this happen before with grandparents who've been very generous. Sometimes when young people grow up expecting financial support, they stop appreciating the sacrifice behind it. Moving the money into your sole control might be exactly the reality check Madison needs. I don't want to be vindictive. I just want to feel like I have some control over my own financial decisions. That's completely reasonable. Should we schedule an appointment to discuss the restructuring? Yes, I said, surprising myself with how certain I sounded. Let's do it this week. The next morning, Madison called again, her voice bright with excitement. Grandma, I have amazing news. Patricia found us the perfect DJ, and he's agreed to do the party for only $8,000. Isn't that great? $8,000 for a DJ, I repeated, stunned. I know it sounds like a lot, but he's done parties for celebrities, and he has this incredible light setup that will make the photos look amazing. Plus he's bringing a fog machine, and these special effects that will make it feel like a real concert. I sat down heavily in my chair. Madison, the entire cost of my wedding was less than what you want to spend on a DJ. That's because weddings were different back then, Grandma. Everything's more expensive now, and if you want quality, you have to pay for it. Besides, this isn't just any party, this is my sweet 16. It's like a wedding, but for teenagers, and you still don't want me there? I never said I didn't want you there. I just think it might be more fun for everyone if you didn't stay the whole time. You could come take pictures with me during the cocktail hour, and then maybe head home before the dancing starts. That way you're part of it, but you don't have to sit through all the loud music and stuff that probably isn't really your scene anyway. I realized she genuinely believed she was being considerate, that asking me to fund her party, and then leave early, was somehow a compromise that should make me happy. Madison, I said slowly, what if I said no? What if I decided not to pay for this party? There was a long pause. You wouldn't do that to me, Grandma. You love me. I do love you. That's not the question. The question is whether you love me. Of course I love you. That's a crazy thing to ask. You're my grandmother. Then why are you ashamed to be seen with me? I'm not ashamed. God, you're being so dramatic. I just want my party to be perfect, and having a bunch of old people there would make it feel more like a family reunion than a sweet 16. Can't you understand that? The casual cruelty of a bunch of old people when referring to me, her grandmother who'd been the most constant presence in her life, hit me like a physical blow. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. Great,
So when can you transfer the money? Patricia needs to put down more deposits this week. I'll let you know, I said, and hung up before she could respond. That afternoon, I drove to Carol's office and signed the papers that moved Madison's college fund into my personal investment account. $237,000 that had been earmarked for my granddaughter's future was now simply part of my retirement savings. How do you feel? Carol asked, as I put down the pen. I thought about it for a moment. Lighter, I said, surprising myself. Like I just put down a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. On the drive home, my phone rang. It was Robert. Mom, Madison's really upset. She said you hung up on her when she was trying to discuss the party details. I didn't hang up on her. I told her I'd let her know about the money. Let her know what? Mom, this party is in 5 weeks. Patricia needs to finalize the vendors. You can't just keep Madison hanging. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car, staring at the house Harold and I had bought 45 years ago, the house where I'd raised Robert, where I'd babysit Madison countless times, where I'd planned to live out my remaining years surrounded by family who loved and respected me. Robert, I said, when was the last time you told me you loved me? What, Mom, what does that have to do with anything? Just answer the question. There was a long pause. I don't know. We're not really a sentimental family, Mom. You know I love you.
When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not to ask for babysitting or help or money, but just to check on me. Another pause. Mom, you're being weird. Is this about the party? Because if you're having second thoughts about the money, I can probably help cover some of it. With what money? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Maybe take out a loan or something. Madison's been looking forward to this for months. You can't just pull the rug out from under her now. I realized my son was willing to go into debt rather than tell his daughter she couldn't have a $40,000 party. More importantly, he assumed that my reluctance was just a negotiating tactic, something to be managed rather than a legitimate expression of how I felt about being treated. I need to go, Robert. Mom, wait. Don't make any hasty decisions. Why don't you come over for dinner this weekend? We can all sit down and talk about this like adults. 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 I repeated. Yes. I think it's time I started acting like one. I hung up and sat in my car for a long time, watching the sun set behind the trees. Harold and I had planted when we first moved to this house. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. That evening, I called Dorothy and told her what I'd done. Good for you, she said immediately. It's about time you stood up for yourself. I feel guilty, I admitted. Madison really wants this party. Madison wants a lot of things. That doesn't mean she should get all of them, especially not at the cost of treating you like garbage. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is just normal teenage behavior, and I'm being too sensitive. Bessie Franklin, Dorothy said firmly, I've known you for 15 years. You are one of the least sensitive people I know. You've put up with behavior from that girl and your son that I wouldn't tolerate from a stranger. If anything, you've been underreacting for years. After I hung up with Dorothy, I poured myself another glass of wine and sat down with a notebook. I started writing down everything I could remember about my relationship with Madison over the past few years. Not just the big moments, but the small interactions, the casual comments, the way she spoke to me when she wanted something versus when she didn't. The pattern that emerged was both clear and heartbreaking. Madison had learned that I was a resource to be managed, not a person to be cherished. She'd learned that my feelings were less important than her wants, that my time and money were hers by right, and that expressions of love from her were rewards I had to earn through compliance, rather than gifts she gave freely. Worse, I realized that I had taught her this by accepting it for so long. The next few days passed quietly. Madison didn't call, which told me she was waiting for me to come to my senses and offer the money. Robert sent a few text messages that started friendly and grew increasingly terse as I failed to respond with the answer he wanted. On Friday afternoon, Patricia Chen called again. Mrs. Franklin, I wanted to follow up about the party planning. We really need to finalize some details this week. I've decided not to contribute to Madison's party. I said simply. There was a shocked silence. I'm sorry, what? I won't be paying for Madison's Sweet 16 party, but Madison said, the money was already set aside. She said it was basically guaranteed. Madison was mistaken. Mrs. Franklin, we've already put down deposits based on the understanding that you would be covering the costs. This puts us in a very difficult position. I felt a flicker of satisfaction at the panic in her voice. I'm sorry to hear that, but those deposits were made without my authorization. This is going to devastate Madison. And frankly, it's going to be very embarrassing for our family as well. We've already sent out save the dates. I'm sure you'll figure something out, I said, and hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone started ringing. Robert first, then Madison, then Robert again. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, around 6 o'clock, Madison showed up at my front door. I opened it to find her standing on my porch, her face red and blotchy from crying, her usual perfectly styled appearance disheveled. Grandma, she said, her voice shaking. Patricia told me what you said. Please tell me it's not true. I looked at my granddaughter, this young woman I'd loved and supported and sacrificed for, and felt something settle in my chest, something that felt like resolve. Come in, we need to talk. Madison stepped into my living room and looked around like she'd never seen it before. Her eyes swept over the familiar furniture, the family photos, the carefully tended plants, as if she was seeing it all through new eyes. When her gaze landed on the framed picture of us from last Christmas, both wearing the matching sweaters I'd knitted, her face crumpled. Grandma, I don't understand what's happening, she said, sinking onto my couch. Patricia said you told her you weren't going to help with my part. That can't be right. I sat down across from her in Harold's old chair, the one I'd kept exactly as he'd left it. It's right, Madison. I've decided not to pay for your party. But why? The question came out as a wail. I thought you loved me. I do love you. That's exactly why we're having this conversation. Madison stared at me with genuine confusion. I don't understand. If you love me, why won't you help me? This party is the most important thing in my life right now. I studied my granddaughter's face, looking for any sign that she understood what she'd done wrong. There was none. In her mind, she was the victim of an inexplicable betrayal. Madison, I said gently, do you remember what you said to me on the phone, about me being too old for your part? Her cheeks flushed slightly. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant that it's going to be a young crowd, and you might not enjoy all the music and dancing and stuff. And when you suggested I pretend not to be your grandmother if I did attend, that was Savannah's idea. Her mom is really into social media, and she thought it might be better for the photos if we kept the focus on the teenagers. It's not personal, Grandma. It's just marketing. Marketing. She was talking about our relationship in terms of market. Madison, how do you think it felt for me to hear that my own granddaughter was ashamed to be seen with me? I'm not ashamed, she protested. You're making this way more dramatic than it needs to be. I just want my party to be perfect. Can't you understand? I looked at this girl I'd raised, this young woman I'd poured my heart and resources into for 16 years, and realized she genuinely couldn't see the problem. In her world, my feelings were secondary to her desires, and expressing hurt about her treatment was dramatic rather than legitimate. Tell me something, Madison, I said. When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for anything, not because you needed something, but just because you wanted to hear my voice. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see her thinking, searching her memory. I don't know, she admitted finally, but I've been really busy with school and friends and everything. When was the last time you asked me how I was doing? When was the last time you noticed if I seemed sad or tired or worried about something? Grandma, you never seem sad. You're always fine. The words hit me like a slap. Always fine. As if I were a piece of furniture rather than a human being with feelings and needs and struggles. Madison, I'm 73 years old. I live alone in this house where your grandfather and I built our life together. Do you think I'm never lonely? Do you think I never have bad days, or worry about things, or miss having someone to talk to? She looked genuinely surprised by the question. I never really thought about it. You seem so independent and strong. I am independent and strong, but I'm also human, and for the past few years, our relationship has become very one-sided. You call when you need something, you visit when you want something, you ask me for help, for money, for time, for energy, but you never give anything back. That's not true. Madison's voice rose defensively. I love you, Grandma. I tell you that all the time. When do you tell me that? She faltered. When you do nice things for me, when you help me with stuff. So you tell me you love me when I give you things. But do you ever just tell me you love me because I exist, because I'm your grandmother, because you value having me in your life? The silence stretched between us. Madison was staring at her hands, her face flushed with what I hoped was shame but might have just been embarrassment at being called out. I don't mean to be selfish, she said finally, her voice small. Everyone expects so much from me, school, friends, social media. I have to keep up with everything, and it's exhausting. When I call you, it's because you're the one person who always helps me. You're like my safe space. I felt my heart crack a little at her words. She wasn't entirely wrong. I had been her safe space, her reliable source of unconditional support, but somewhere along the way, that had turned into unconditional service. Madison, being someone's safe space means they can come to you with their problems and feelings. It doesn't mean they can treat you like a personal assistant who exists solely to solve their problems and fund their lifestyle. I don't treat you like a personal assistant, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Don't you? When was the last time you helped me with something? When was the last time you offered to do something for me without being asked? Again, silence. When was the last time you spent time with me doing something I enjoyed, rather than something you needed? Madison's eyes filled with tears. I didn't realize. I thought you liked helping me. You never complained. You're right. I never complained, and that's partly my fault. I was so happy to be needed, so grateful to have a role in your life, that I didn't speak up when the balance tipped too far. But Madison, love isn't just about being grateful for what someone gives you, it's about caring for their well-being, considering their feelings, treating them with respect and kindness. I do care about you, she whispered. Do you? Because when I told you that being excluded from your party hurt my feelings, you dismissed that as me being dramatic. When I suggested that $40,000 was too much to spend on a single party, you acted like I was being unreasonable. When your friend's mother suggested I was too old and unattractive to be in your party photos, you went along with it rather than defending me. Madison was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know it would hurt you so much. I thought you understood that I was just trying to fit in. At what cost, Madison? At the cost of treating me like I'm disposable. At the cost of talking about my money like it belongs to you. At the cost of being ashamed of your own grandmother. I'm not ashamed of you, she said through her tears. I wanted everything to be perfect. Savannah's party was so amazing, and everyone's been talking about it for months. I wanted mine to be even better. I wanted people to remember it forever. I reached over and handed her a tissue from the box I kept on the side table. Madison, what do you think people will remember about a party like that? What do you think matters more, having an expensive party that impresses people for one night, or having a grandmother who loves you enough to invest in your future? Both? She said hopefully, then immediately looked ashamed of the answer. I shook my head sadly. That's not how it works, sweetheart. You can't treat people badly and then expect them to keep giving you everything you want, and you can't build genuine relationships based on what people can do for you, rather than who they are as. Madison wiped her eyes and looked around my living room again. This time her gaze lingered on things I wasn't sure she'd ever really noticed before. The carefully arranged flowers from my garden, the handmade quilts draped over the furniture, the books stacked neatly on the coffee table, the photo albums filled with pictures of our life together. Grandma, she said quietly, I think I've been really selfish, but I don't know how to fix it. For the first time in our conversation, I felt a flicker of hope. The first step is recognizing. The second step is changing how you treat people going forward. But what about my party? I already told everyone it was going to be this amazing event. If I have to cancel it, I'll be humiliated. I looked at my granddaughter, still thinking primarily about herself even in the middle of an apology, and realized this was going to be a longer process than one conversation. Madison, what kind of party could you have with the money your father is willing to spend? Dad said he could maybe do $5,000, but that's nothing. That wouldn't even cover the venue rental. What if you had the party here, in our backyard? She looked horrified. Here, Grandma. This house is tiny and old. The backyard isn't even that big. Your grandfather and I hosted parties for 50 people in that backyard. We had your father's graduation party there, several anniversary celebrations, countless family gatherings. It can be beautiful if you put some effort into it, but it's not the country club, it's not Instagram worthy. I felt my patience beginning to fray. Even in the middle of a conversation about her selfishness, Madison was still focused on impressing people rather than celebrating with people who cared about her. Madison, do you want a party because you want to celebrate your 16th birthday with people you love, or do you want a party because you want to show off to people you're trying to impress? She was quiet for a long moment. I want people to think I'm special, she admitted finally. You are special, but not because of how much money gets spent on your party. You're special because of who you are as a person, because of how you treat others, because of the kindness and love you show to the world. But that's not how it works at school, Graham. Everyone judges you based on what you have, what you wear, where you go, what your parents can afford. If my party is lame, people will think I'm lame. I felt a deep sadness wash over me. Somewhere along the way, my confident, creative granddaughter had become someone who measured her worth by other people's approval. Madison, the people who would judge you for having a smaller party, are those really the people whose opinions you should care about? They're my friends. Are they? Are they friends who would support you no matter what, who would stand by you if things got difficult, who care about your character more than your possessions? Or are they people who are only nice to you when you have something to offer them? The question hung in the air between us. I could see Madison thinking about it, probably for the first time. I don't know, she said finally. I've never really thought about it that way. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and saw Robert's name. That's probably your father. He's been calling and texting since Patricia told him about my decision. He's really upset, Madison said. He said you were being unreasonable and that you were going to ruin my birthday. What do you think, Madison? Do you think I'm being unreasonable? She considered the question seriously, which was more than she'd done earlier. I think maybe I haven't been very fair to you, but I also think pulling all the money away feels really harsh. The money isn't gone, Madison. It's still there. It's still intended for your future. But I've decided that your future means your education, not a single party. What if I promised to be better? What if I said I was sorry and meant it? Would you change your mind? I looked at my granddaughter, seeing both the manipulative teenager who'd learned to say whatever would get her what she wanted, and the little girl I'd loved unconditionally for 16. Madison, if you're genuinely sorry, if you genuinely want to change how you treat me and other people, then I'm proud of you, but that can't be contingent on getting what you want. You can't be sorry because I'm not giving you money. You have to be sorry because you realize you hurt someone you love. She was quiet for a long time, staring out my window at the garden where she'd played as a child, where I'd taught her to plant seeds, and water flowers and identify birds. I think I am sorry, she said finally. Not just because of the money. I think I've been treating you badly for a while now, and I didn't even realize it. When you put it all together like that, it sounds really awful. It's not awful, sweetheart. It's thoughtless, and thoughtlessness can be fixed if you're willing to work on it. How? By paying attention to other people's feelings, by asking yourself not just what you want, but what impact your words and actions have on others, by remembering that the people who love you are people, not resources. Madison nodded slowly. Could we start over? Could I try to be better? And could you maybe reconsider helping with the party? I felt my resolve wavering. This was the trap I'd fallen into so many times before. Madison would show a moment of insight, express regret, and I would immediately forgive, and give her whatever she wanted, which taught her that apologies were just another tool for getting her way. Madison, I'm glad you want to do better. I really am, but this isn't about earning your way back to getting the party funded. This is about learning to be a better person whether you get what you want or not. So you're definitely not going to pay for the party. I'm definitely not going to pay for a $40,000 party, where I'm not welcome. If you want to plan something more modest,
something that focuses on celebrating with people who genuinely care about you. I might be willing to contribute, but the extravaganza at the country club? No. Madison's face fell, but everyone's expecting it now. I already told people it was going to be amazing. Then you'll have to tell them plans have changed. They'll think I'm lying. They'll think my family doesn't have money. Madison, do you hear yourself right now? You're more worried about what people will think about your family's finances than you are about the fact that you hurt your grandmother's feelings. She flinched at my words. That's not, I mean, I am worried about your feelings, but I'm also worried about being embarrassed at school. Being embarrassed about having a smaller party is a temporary discomfort. Learning to value relationships over appearances is a life skill that will serve you forever. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Robert. I let it go to voicemail. Are you going to talk to Dad? Madison asked, eventually, but right now, I'm talking to you. He's going to be really mad. Your father has some learning to do as well. Madison looked surprised by that statement. What do you mean? I mean that your father has been enabling your behavior instead of teaching you to be grateful and considerate. He's been asking me to fund your lifestyle instead of helping you understand the value of money and work, and he's been treating me like a bank account rather than his mother. Dad loves you, I'm sure he does, but love without respect isn't enough, and both of you have stopped respecting me somewhere along the way. Madison was crying again, but these tears seemed different, less about not getting what she wanted, and more about genuine realization of what she'd done. Grandma, I really don't want to lose you. I don't want you to stop loving me. Madison, I will never stop loving you, but I might stop enabling you. There's a difference. What does that mean? It means I will always care about your well-being, but I won't always give you everything you want. It means I will support your genuine needs, but I won't fund your every desire. It means I will be here for you when you need guidance, or comfort, or help with real problems, but I won't be your personal ATM. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I think I understand, and I think maybe that's better. Like maybe I've been asking for too much because I knew you'd always say yes. That's very insightful, Madison. So what happens now, with the party I mean? Now you figure out what kind of celebration you can have within a reasonable budget, with people who actually care about you, in a way that doesn't require anyone to be ashamed of their family, and you'll help plan it. If you want my help, and if you treat me like a valued participant, rather than hired help, then yes. Madison was quiet for a few minutes, thinking. Finally she said, what if we did have it here, in your backyard? What would that look like? For the first time in our conversation, I smiled. It would look like a celebration of you becoming a young woman, surrounded by people who love you and want to see you succeed. It would look like good food, good music, good company, and genuine joy. It wouldn't look like a magazine spread, but it would look like love. Could we still have decorations? And a DJ? We could have decorations that we make together, or buy within a reasonable budget. We could have music, maybe not an $8,000 DJ, but definitely music for dancing. We could have good food, nice photos, special touches that make the day memorable, and my friends would still come. The friends who care about you will come. The friends who only care about being seen at expensive events might not, and maybe that's information worth having. Madison nodded slowly. Can I think about it? Can I go home and really consider what kind of party I want, and what kind of person I want to be?
Of course. Take all the time you need. She stood up to leave, then turned back to me. Grandma, I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I want you to change your mind about the money, but because I've been treating you badly and you don't deserve that. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. That means more to me than you know. After Madison left, I sat in my quiet living room and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the peace of avoiding conflict, but the peace of standing up for myself and setting healthy boundaries. My phone rang almost immediately. Robert. Mom, what the hell did you say to Madison? She came home crying and said the party was canceled. Hello to you too, Robert. Don't be cute. Madison is devastated. She's upstairs sobbing like her life is over. What did you do? I had an honest conversation with her about how she's been treating me. Treating you? Mom, she adores you. Does she? When was the last time she did something thoughtful for me? When was the last time she showed any interest in my life or my feelings? She's 16, Mom. Teenagers are self-centered. That's normal. Self-centered is normal. Cruel is not. And asking me to fund a party I'm not welcome to attend crosses the line into cruel. She never said you weren't welcome. She said I was too old for her party. She suggested I pretend not to be her grandmother. She asked me to make an appearance for photos and then leave before the real fun started. How is that welcoming? Robert was quiet for a moment. Maybe she could have phrased it better, but you have to understand the pressure these kids are under. Everything is about social media now, about image and perception. Madison just wants to fit in, at the cost of treating her family like garbage, at the cost of learning that people exist to serve her needs. Robert, I raised you better than this. What happened to teaching children gratitude and respect? Times are different now, Mom. Kids today face pressures we never dealt with. Kids today face the same fundamental choice every generation has faced, whether to be kind or selfish, whether to consider others or focus only on themselves. The circumstances might be different, but the character choices are the same. So you're just going to punish her for being a normal teenager? I'm not punishing her. I'm teaching her that actions have consequences. I'm teaching her that she can't treat people badly and then expect them to keep funding her lifestyle. Funding her lifestyle? Mom, it's one party. One special day in her life. Robert, it's not one party. It's years of taking me for granted. It's years of calling only when she needs something. It's years of treating me like a resource rather than a person. The party was just the final straw. You're being ridiculous. Am I? When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? I call you all the time, to ask for babysitting, to ask for help with Madison, to ask for money. When did you last call just to talk to your mother because you value having me in your life? Another silence. I'm busy, Mom. I work full-time. I'm raising a teenager. I have responsibilities. And I'm retired, so I have nothing but time on my hands. I don't have feelings or needs, or a life of my own. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Robert sighed heavily. Look, maybe we've all gotten a little too comfortable taking your help for granted. But Madison's party is next month. She's already told everyone about it. If you pull funding now, she'll be humiliated. She can still have a party, Robert. Just not a $40,000 extravaganza. With what money? I don't have that kind of cash lying around. Then maybe she needs to learn that parties cost money. And if you want an expensive party, you need to earn the money to pay for it. She's 16. Exactly. She's old enough to understand basic financial concepts. She's old enough to understand that money doesn't grow on trees. She's old enough to understand that if you want something, you either earn it or you go without it. Mom, you're being unreasonable. That college fund has been sitting there for years. Madison knows it exists. Using some of it for her party isn't unreasonable. The college fund is for college, Robert. It's not a slush fund for whatever Madison wants. College is expensive, but it's not like she needs the whole fund. Using part of it for her party makes sense. I felt my blood pressure rising. Robert, do you hear yourself? You're talking about my money. Money I saved through years of sacrifice. Like it belongs to Madison. Like I'm just the custodian of funds that are rightfully hers. Well, isn't that kind of what a college fund is? No, Robert. A college fund is a gift I chose to create for Madison's benefit. But it's still my money, and I still get to decide how it's used. And I've decided it should be used for education, not for impressing her friends. So what? You're just going to let her be humiliated at school. I'm going to let her learn that the world doesn't revolve around her, and that treating people badly has consequences. You're being cruel. I'm being a parent, something you seem to have forgotten how to do. The words hung in the air between us. I could hear Robert breathing heavily on the other end of the line. That's not fair, Mom. Isn't it? Robert, You've been asking me to fund Madison's lifestyle instead of teaching her to be grateful for what she has. You've been enabling her entitled behavior instead of correcting it. You've been treating me like a backup parent who exists to solve problems and provide money, instead of your mother who deserves respect and consideration. I don't treat you like that. Don't you? When did you last invite me to dinner just because you wanted my company? When did you last ask for my advice about something important? When did you last show any interest in my life beyond what I could do for Madison? I don't know. I've been focused on raising my daughter, and I've been focused on helping you. But somewhere along the way, helping became enabling, and being generous became being taken advantage of. Robert was quiet for a long time. Finally he said, "So what do you want from us?" "I want to be treated like a person who matters. I want to be included in family decisions instead of just being asked to fund them. I want Madison to show some interest in my life and some gratitude for the sacrifices I've made for her. I want both of you to remember that I'm your family, not your employee. And if we do that, you'll pay for the party." I closed my eyes and counted to 10. Robert, the fact that you're still focused on the money tells me you're not hearing what I'm saying. I'm hearing you. I just don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of it. Because it is a big deal. Because the way Madison spoke to me was hurtful and unacceptable. Because the way you've both been treating me is unsustainable. Because I'm 73 years old, and I don't have unlimited time left to be taken for granted. That last sentence seemed to hit him differently. His voice was quieter when he spoke again. "Mom, you're not. I mean, you're healthy. You're fine." "I am fine, but I'm also getting older, and I'm tired of being treated like my only value is what I can provide for other people." "That's not. We don't think of you that way." "Then prove it. Show me that you value me as a person, not just as a resource." "How?" "Start by having conversations with me that aren't about what you need. Start by asking about my life, my feelings, my interests. Start by including me in decisions instead of just asking me to fund them after the fact." "And Madison's party," I saw. "Robert, if Madison can apologize genuinely, if she can plan a celebration that's actually about celebrating rather than showing off, if she can treat me like a valued family member instead of an embarrassing old lady, then I might consider contributing to a reasonable party budget. But the $40,000 country club extravaganza where I'm not truly welcome, that's off the table permanently." "What's reasonable?" $5,000, maybe 10, if she really puts thought and care into making it special. "That's nothing. That's more than many families spend on their entire annual vacation, Robert. That's more than I spent on my wedding." "It's only nothing if you've lost perspective on the value of money." "Fine, I'll talk to Madison about scaling back." "Don't just talk to her about scaling back. Talk to her about being grateful. Talk to her about treating people with kindness and respect. Talk to her about the difference between wanting something and deserving something." "I will." "And Robert, think about how you want our relationship to look going forward. Because I'm not going back to being the family ATM who gets called only when someone needs something." After I hung up, I sat in my chair and watched the sun set through my living room window. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life instead of being swept along by other people's demands and expectations. My phone buzzed with a text from Dorothy. "How did the conversation go with Madison?" I texted back, "Better than expected. She's starting to understand. Robert is going to take longer. Good for you for standing your ground. Want to get coffee tomorrow and tell me all about it?" I smiled as I typed my response. "I'd love that." It felt good to have plans that were about what I wanted to do, rather than what someone else needed me to do. It felt good to be Bessie Franklin, a woman with her own life and interests, rather than just Grandma Bessie, the reliable source of unconditional support. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat down with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. For the first time in a long time, I had an evening that belonged entirely to me. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was in my garden deadheading the roses and enjoying the quiet morning air when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the garden gate, I could see Patricia Chen striding toward my front door with the determined gait of someone on a mission. I continued pruning my roses, taking my time. Let her wait. After a few minutes of persistent doorbell ringing, I heard her footsteps coming around the side of the house. Mrs. Franklin, Patricia's voice carried a note of barely controlled frustration. Could we speak for a moment? I looked up from my flowers, noting her perfectly styled hair, designer handbag, and the kind of manicured appearance that suggested she'd never done a day of manual labor in her life. Good morning, Patricia. Beautiful day, isn't it? Miss Franklin, I think there's been some miscommunication about Madison's party. I'd like to clear things up. I straightened up, brushing soil from my gardening gloves. I don't think there's been any miscommunication. I told you yesterday that I wouldn't be funding Madison's party. Patricia's smile was tight and professional. Yes, but I think you may not fully understand what's at stake here. We've already committed to vendors, sent out invitations, made deposits. People are expecting a certain level of event. What people are expecting isn't my responsibility, but it is your granddaughter's reputation that will suffer if this party doesn't meet expectations. I studied Patricia's face, seeing the calculation behind her concerned expression. And why exactly is Madison's reputation your concern? Savannah and Madison are best friends. What affects one affects the other. If Madison's party is a disappointment, it reflects poorly on our entire social circle. There it was, the real reason for this visit. Patricia wasn't concerned about Madison's feelings or well-being. She was concerned about how Madison's reduced circumstances might affect her own daughter's social standing. I see, I said carefully. And what exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing we find a solution that works for everyone. Perhaps you could consider this an investment in Madison's future networking opportunities. The connections she makes at events like this can last a lifetime. I almost laughed out loud. Patricia was actually trying to sell me on funding Madison's party as a business investment. Patricia, Madison is 16 years old. She's not building a professional network at a sweet 16 party. She's trying to impress teenagers. You'd be surprised how these relationships carry forward. Many of the families in our circle have significant influence in this community. The right connections can open doors for college admissions, internships, future opportunities. The right connections, I repeated. And what kind of doors do you think being known as the girl whose grandmother funds her lavish lifestyle will open? Patricia's smile faltered slightly. I think you're misunderstanding the social dynamics at play here. Am I? Or are you misunderstanding what it means to raise a child with character and values? Mrs. Franklin, with all due respect, the world has changed since you were raising children. Today's young people face different pressures, different expectations. What worked in your generation doesn't necessarily apply today. I felt a familiar fire building in my chest. And what makes you think that kindness, gratitude, and respect for others are outdated concepts? I'm not saying they're outdated. I'm saying they need to be balanced with practical considerations. Madison needs to maintain her social position if she wants to have opportunities. What opportunity? The opportunity to be friends with people who judge her based on how much money gets spent on her party. The opportunity to learn that her worth is measured by her possessions rather than her character. Patricia's professional demeanor was beginning to crack. Look, Miss Franklin, I understand you have certain traditional values, but the reality is that we live in a competitive world. Children who don't keep up get left behind. Left behind from what? From a social circle that values superficiality over substance, from friendships based on what you can afford rather than who you are as a person. Maybe being left behind from that would be the best thing that could happen to Madison. That's easy for you to say. You don't have to watch your child struggle to fit in. You're right. I don't have to watch my child struggle to fit in, because I taught my child that fitting in isn't the most important thing in life. Being a good person is. Patricia's mask slipped entirely. Mrs. Franklin, I came here hoping we could have a reasonable conversation. But if you're determined to sabotage Madison's party out of some misguided attempt to teach her a lesson, then I think this conversation is over. Sabotage? I set down my pruning shears and looked Patricia directly in the eye. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm simply declining to fund an event where I'm not welcome, planned by people who see me as nothing more than a checkbook. Madison never said you weren't welcome, didn't she? When she suggested I leave before the dancing started so I wouldn't embarrass her. When she asked me to pretend not to be her grandmother for the photos. When she dismissed my age and appearance as incompatible with her party's aesthetic. Patricia had the grace to look uncomfortable. Perhaps there were some communication issues. There were no communication issues. There was disrespect, plain and simple. And I won't reward disrespect with financial support. So you're willing to humiliate Madison to make a point. I'm willing to let Madison experience the natural consequences of her choices. If she's humiliated, it's because she made promises she couldn't keep and treated people badly in the process. Patricia gathered her purse and straightened her shoulders. I hope you'll reconsider, Mrs. Franklin. For Madison's sake, I've considered everything I need to consider. Have a good day, Patricia. I watched her stride back to her car, her heels clicking sharply on my driveway. Through the windshield I could see her making a phone call before she even pulled away from the curb, probably calling someone to complain about the unreasonable old woman who was ruining everything. I went back to my roses, feeling oddly energized by the confrontation. For too many years I'd avoided conflict, smoothed over problems, accommodated everyone else's needs at the expense of my own. Standing my ground felt foreign but invigorating. My phone rang an hour later. It was Robert again. Mom, Patricia Chen just called me. She's very upset. I imagine she is. She said you were rude to her and completely unwilling to discuss compromises. I wasn't rude. I was direct. And there's nothing to compromise about. I'm not funding Madison's party, and that's final. Mom, Patricia's family is well connected in this community. They could make things difficult for Madison at school. I felt a chill run down my spine. Are you suggesting that if I don't pay for Madison's party, this woman will encourage her daughter to socially ostracize Madison? I'm just saying that these relationships matter. Patricia has influence. Robert, listen to yourself. You're essentially telling me that I need to pay protection money to keep Madison from being bullied. That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that if I don't fund Madison's party, Patricia will use her social influence to hurt Madison. And you think this is acceptable? I think it's reality. Then it's a reality that needs to change. And it starts with people like us refusing to be intimidated by people like Patricia. Mom, you don't understand how these things work. I understand perfectly. I understand that there are people who use their children's social lives as weapons to get what they want. I understand that there are parents who prioritize their children's social status over their character development. And I understand that both you and Madison have been drawn into this toxic dynamic. It's not toxic, it's just how things are. Robert, when I was your age, we judged people by their character, their kindness, their integrity. When did we start judging them by how much money they could spend on parties? Times have changed, Mom. Have they? Or have we just lost our way? There was a long pause. Mom, I'm asking you to reconsider, not for Patricia, not for appearances, but for Madison. She's genuinely upset. I know she is. And I hope that upset leads to some self-reflection about how she treats the people who love her. You're really not going to budge on this? I'm really not. Fine. But when Madison comes home from school crying because her friends are making fun of her, remember that you could have prevented it. And when Madison grows up to be a spoiled, entitled adult who treats people badly because she never learned that actions have consequences, remember that you could have prevented that too. Robert hung up without saying goodbye. I sat staring at my phone, feeling sad but resolute. This was harder than I'd expected, but it was also more necessary than I'd realized. That afternoon, I decided to take action rather than just react. I drove to the library and spent 2 hours researching party planning on a budget, creative decorating ideas, and DIY celebration concepts. If Madison decided she wanted to have a meaningful celebration rather than an expensive spectacle, I wanted to be ready to help her create something beautiful. I also stopped by the local community college and picked up information about their early enrollment programs, scholarship opportunities, and career counseling services. If Madison was going to start thinking seriously about her future, she needed to understand all her options. When I got home, my answering machine was blinking with 3 messages. The first was from Robert, asking me to call him back.
The second was from Madison, sobbing about how everyone at school was already talking about her party and how humiliated she was going to be. The third was from a number I didn't recognize. I played the third message. Mrs. Franklin, this is Janet Morrison, Madison's guidance counselor at school. I understand there's been some family tension regarding Madison's upcoming birthday celebration. I wondered if you might have time to speak with me this week. I think there are some things you should know about Madison's situation at school. I called Janet back immediately. Mrs. Morrison, this is Bessie Franklin returning your call. Mrs. Franklin, thank you for calling back so quickly. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Madison listed you as an emergency contact, and I felt this situation warranted some outside perspective. What situation exactly? Madison came to my office today very upset about her birthday party, but as we talked, some other concerns emerged. Mrs. Franklin, has Madison discussed her academic performance with you recently? I felt my stomach drop. No, she hasn't. Is there a problem? Madison's grades have been declining steadily this semester. She's currently failing 2 classes, and barely passing 3 others. Her teachers report that she seems distracted, that she's more focused on social media and social events than on her coursework. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. I had no idea. She's always been a good student. She was, but this year, things have changed. Her priorities seem to have shifted significantly. Has anyone talked to her father about this? We've sent several notices home, but Madison claimed she would handle the situation herself. When we insisted on a parent conference, she said her father was too busy, and that you were the one who helped with school issues. My heart clenched. Madison had been lying to everyone, managing information to avoid consequences and accountability. Miss Morrison, I haven't been told about any academic problems. Madison calls me about parties and shopping and friend drama, but she's never mentioned struggling in school. I suspected as much. Mrs. Franklin, I'm going to be direct with you. Madison seems to be under the impression that her academic performance doesn't matter because she has other plans for her future.
She's mentioned several times that she doesn't need to worry about college because she has a college fund that she can use for other purposes. I closed my eyes and felt everything click into place. Madison's casual dismissal of education, her assumption that the college money was available for her party, her lack of concern about her future, it all made sense. Now, Mrs. Morrison, Madison was misinformed about her college fund. That money is specifically for education, and it's contingent on her actually pursuing education seriously. I thought that might be the case. Mrs. Franklin, I've been counseling students for 20 years, and I've seen this pattern before. When young people grow up believing they have a financial safety net, they sometimes stop working toward their goals. They assume the money will solve whatever problems arise. What do you recommend? Honestly, I think the crisis around her birthday party might be exactly what Madison needs. She's been living in a bubble where she believes she's entitled to certain things without having to earn them. Reality is about to intrude, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Her father thinks I'm being too hard. Parents often enable their children's worst impulses because they want to protect them from disappointment. But disappointment is how we learn resilience. Consequences are how we learn responsibility. Do you think there's hope for turning things around academically? Absolutely. Madison is intelligent and capable, but she needs to start taking her education seriously, and that probably won't happen as long as she believes she has an unlimited financial cushion to fall back on. What would you suggest I do? Be honest with her about the college fund condition. Make it clear that financial support for her future is tied to academic performance and genuine effort. And perhaps most importantly, don't rescue her from the natural consequences of her choices. After I hung up with Janet, I sat in my kitchen thinking about everything I'd learned. Madison wasn't just being disrespectful about the party, she was failing in school, lying to avoid accountability, and operating under the dangerous assumption that my money would solve all her problems. I called Carol, my financial advisor. Carol, I need to make some additional changes to Madison's college fund. What kind of changes? I want to add performance conditions. The money should only be available if Madison maintains certain academic standards and demonstrates genuine commitment to her education. That's definitely doable. We can restructure it as a conditional scholarship fund, with specific requirements for disbursement. I also want to add a clause that requires my approval for any withdrawals, regardless of the stated purpose. Absolutely. You're the owner of the account, so you have complete control over how and when the funds are distributed. And Carol, I want you to prepare a detailed explanation of how college costs have changed, what the fund will and won't cover, and what Madison will need to contribute through scholarships, work-study, or loan. Many young people have no realistic understanding of education costs or the value of the financial support they're receiving. That evening, Madison showed up at my door again. This time, she wasn't crying. She looked angry. "Grandma, I know you talked to Mrs. Morrison today. I did, and I learned some very interesting things about your academic performance." Madison's defiance wavered slightly. "School is just really hard right now. I've been stressed about the party and social stuff." "Madison, you're failing 2 classes. That's not stress. That's not trying." "I am trying. The work is just really difficult, and the teachers don't explain things well." "Have you asked for help? Have you gone to tutoring? Have you talked to your teachers about what you're struggling with?" Madison looked away. "I don't have time for all that. I have other commitments." "What commitments?" "Spending time on social media, planning parties, shopping with friends. Those things are important too. Are they more important than your education? More important than your future?" "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, Graham. If I don't maintain my social connections, I'll have nothing." I stared at my granddaughter, seeing clearly for perhaps the first time how far she'd drifted from the values I'd tried to instill in her. "Madison, if your social connections depend on how much money gets spent on your party, then they're not connections worth maintaining." "That's easy for you to say. You grew up in a different time when things were simpler." "Things weren't simpler, Madison. People were just clearer about what mattered. Character mattered. Education mattered. Hard work mattered. Treating people with kindness and respect mattered. Those things still matter, but they're not enough anymore. You have to have the right image, the right connections, the right lifestyle." "According to who?" "According to everyone, according to society." "Madison, society is made up of individuals making choices. You can choose to value substance over superficiality. You can choose to prioritize character over image. You can choose to work toward meaningful goals instead of chasing approval from people who don't really care about you." "But what if I choose wrong? What if I end up alone because I don't fit in?" For the first time in our conversation, I heard real vulnerability in Madison's voice. Under all the entitlement and attitude was a scared 16-year-old girl who was desperately trying to find her place in the world. "Madison, you will never end up alone if you focus on being someone worth knowing. People who value the same things you value will find you and appreciate you. But if you build your life around impressing people who only care about surface things, you'll always be alone even when you're surrounded by people." Madison was quiet for a long moment. "What if I can't figure out how to be different? What if I'm already too far down this path?" "You're 16 years old, you have plenty of time to change direction. But it starts with making different choices, even when those choices are difficult or unpopular. Like having a smaller party, like focusing on what actually matters, like taking your education serious, like treating the people who love you with respect and gratitude, like being the kind of person you'd want to be friends with." Madison nodded slowly. "Mrs. Morrison said I might not graduate on time if I don't bring my grades up. How does that make you feel?" "Scared. And embarrassed. And like maybe I've been focusing on the wrong things." "Those are all reasonable responses. The question is what you're going to do about it." "I don't know. I feel like I've gotten so far off track that I don't know how to get back on. One step at a time, sweetheart. One better choice followed by another better choice. Will you help me? I'll help you if you're genuinely committed to changing. But I won't enable you to continue making poor choices." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I'll support your education, your genuine growth, your efforts to become a better person. But I won't fund your lifestyle, rescue you from consequences you've earned, or pretend that your poor choices are someone else's fault." Madison was quiet for a long time, staring out my kitchen window at the garden where she'd played as a child. Grandma, what if we did have my party here? In your backyard, what would that look like? It would look like a celebration of you turning 16, surrounded by people who genuinely care about you, focused on joy and connection rather than impressing others. Could we still make it special? We could make it meaningful, which is better than special. What's the difference? Special is about appearances, meaningful is about memories and relationships, and genuine happiness. Madison nodded thoughtfully. Could we maybe plan it together? Could you help me figure out how to make it meaningful instead of just expensive? I would love that, Madison. But first you need to have some conversations with your father about your grades, and you need to start taking responsibility for your academic situation. He's going to be really upset, probably, but hiding from problems doesn't make them go away, it just makes them bigger. Will you be there when I tell him? If you want me to be, I think I do. I think I need someone there who's not going to let me make excuses or blame other people. I reached across the table and took Madison's hand. I'm proud of you for wanting to do better, sweetheart. That takes courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel scared and confused. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing the right thing even when you're scared. Madison squeezed my hand. Can we call Dad now? Can we get this over with before I lose my nerve? Of course. I dialed Robert's number and put the phone on speaker. Mom, I really don't want to argue with you again today. Robert, Madison is here with me, and she has something she needs to tell you. There was a pause. Madison, are you okay? Madison took a shaky breath. Dad, I need to tell you about my grades, and about some choices I've been making, and I need to do it without making excuses or blaming other people. Your grades? Madison, what's going on? For the next 20 minutes, Madison told her father everything about failing her classes, about lying to avoid parent conferences, about assuming she could use college money for other purposes, about prioritizing social status over academic performance. Robert listened in stunned silence until she finished. Madison, why didn't you tell me any of this before? Because I knew you'd be disappointed, and I thought I could fix it myself. But I can't. I need help, and I need to start making better choices. Robert struggled for words. This is a lot to process, I know, and I know you're probably really mad. I'm not mad, Madison. I'm concerned, and honestly I'm a little shocked that things got this far without me knowing about it. Dad, that's partly my fault too, Madison said, her voice steady despite her tears. I've been managing information, only telling you and Grandma the parts of my life that I wanted you to know about. I've been manipulating situations to avoid consequences. I felt a surge of pride at Madison's honesty, even as my heart broke for the pain she was experiencing. So what do we do now? Robert asked. Now we make a plan, I said. A plan for Madison to catch up academically, a plan for her to learn better decision-making skills, and a plan for all of us to communicate more honestly going forward. And the party? Robert asked. Madison answered before I could. The party isn't the priority anymore, Dad. Getting my life back on track is the priority, but your birthday is still important, sweetheart. I know. And Grandma and I talked about having a smaller celebration here, focused on the people who really matter instead of trying to impress everyone. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Madison, I owe you an apology. What for? For not paying closer attention to what was really going on in your life, for enabling some of your poor choices, because I wanted you to be happy, for not teaching you better values about money and priorities. Dad, you don't have to apologize. I made my own choice. Yes, but I could have guided you better. I could have been more involved in your academic life, more aware of the pressures you were facing, more intentional about teaching you important life skills. We all made mistakes, I said. The question is what we do going forward. Going forward, things are going to be different, Robert said firmly. Madison, we're going to meet with your teachers this week and create a plan for bringing your grades up. We're going to establish better communication about what's happening in your life. And we're going to have some serious conversations about priorities and values. And the party? Madison asked. We'll plan something meaningful here at Grandma's house, focused on celebrating you becoming a young woman, rather than impressing your friends. Thank you, Madison whispered. Don't thank me yet, Robert said. This is going to involve a lot of hard work and some difficult changes. I know, but I want to do better. I want to be someone I can be proud of, not just someone who looks good on social media. After we hung up, Madison and I sat in comfortable silence for a while. Grandma, she said finally, I'm sorry, really truly sorry, not because I want something from you, but because I've been treating you badly, and you deserve so much better. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me. Can we start planning a different kind of party, one where you're not just welcome but honored, one where we celebrate our relationship instead of being ashamed of it? I felt tears spring to my eyes. I would love that more than anything. Good, because I want everyone to know that I have the most amazing grandmother in the world, and I'm lucky to be your granddaughter. For the first time in months, I felt like I had my real granddaughter back. The entitled, dismissive teenager was gone, replaced by a young woman who was ready to do the hard work of growing up. It was going to be a long road, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about the journey ahead. The following Monday morning brought the confrontation I'd been expecting but dreading. I was watering my indoor plants when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway, not one, but two. Through my front window I could see Patricia Chen striding up my walkway with another woman I didn't recognize, both of them wearing expressions that suggested this wasn't a social call. I answered the door before they could ring the bell. Miss Franklin, Patricia said, her voice clipped and formal, this is Miranda Walsh, Savannah's godmother. We need to speak with you about the situation you've created. I looked at the second woman, noting her expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of cold confidence that usually came with significant wealth or power. Everything about her screamed authority and entitlement. Good morning, ladies. What situation would that be? Miranda stepped forward, clearly considering herself the more intimidating of the two. Mrs. Franklin, I'm an attorney, and I specialize in contract law. Patricia has informed me that you made certain commitments regarding Madison's party, and that vendors have been contracted based on those commitments. I felt my spine straighten. I made no commitments to anyone except my granddaughter, and those commitments were conditional on her behavior and attitude. Verbal agreements can be legally binding, Miranda continued, her tone suggesting she was used to intimidating people into compliance. When you allowed planning to proceed based on the understanding that you would provide financial backing, you created an expectation of payment. I allowed no such thing. Any planning that occurred happened without my knowledge or consent. Patricia jumped in, her voice tight with frustration. You knew Madison was planning an elaborate party. You knew we were making arrangements. Your silence constituted agreement. I almost laughed. My silence constituted nothing except silence. I never agreed to fund a $40,000 party. I never signed any contracts, and I never authorized anyone to spend money on my behalf. Miranda pulled out her phone and began scrolling through what appeared to be notes. Miss Franklin, according to Patricia, you specifically discussed the availability of Madison's college fund for party expenses. I discussed nothing. Madison informed me that she wanted to use college money for her party. I never agreed to it. But you didn't explicitly refuse at that time, Patricia said. You said you'd think about it, and I did think about it, and I decided the answer was no. Miranda's eyes narrowed. Miss Franklin, when elderly individuals make financial decisions that deviate significantly from previous patterns of behavior, it can sometimes indicate diminished capacity. Have you had any cognitive assessments recently? The insult hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. Are you suggesting that refusing to fund my granddaughter's extravagant party is evidence of mental incompetence? I'm suggesting that your sudden reversal of what appears to have been a commitment suggests either memory issues or decision-making problems that warrant investigation. I felt rage building in my chest, but I also felt something else. Complete certainty that I was dealing with people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. Ladies, I'm going to be very clear about something. I am 73 years old, but I am in full possession of my mental faculties. I have never committed to funding Madison's party. I have never signed any agreements with vendors. I have never authorized anyone to make financial decisions on my behalf. And I will not be intimidated into paying for something I never agreed to fund. Mrs. Franklin, Patricia said, her voice taking on a pleading tone,
You have to understand the position this puts everyone in. We've already put down deposits, vendors have been booked, invitations have been sent. People are expecting a certain kind of event. Then perhaps you should have confirmed funding before making those commitments. Miranda stepped closer, her voice dropping to what I assumed was her most threatening tone. Mrs. Franklin, I want you to understand that there could be legal consequences if you refuse to honor your obligations. Promissory estoppel is a real legal concept, and if damages have been incurred based on reasonable reliance on your promises, you could be held liable. I looked at this woman, this stranger who was standing on my front porch threatening to sue me because I wouldn't pay for a teenage party, and I realized that this situation had moved far beyond Madison's entitled behavior. This was about a group of adults who saw my money as available for their use, and were prepared to use legal intimidation to get it. Miranda, I want you to listen very carefully. I have made no promises, verbal or otherwise, regarding Madison's party. I have signed no agreement. I have authorized no expenses. If you or Patricia have incurred costs based on assumptions rather than actual commitments, that's your mistake, not my obligation. And if you continue to stand on my property making threats, I'll call the police and report harassment. Patricia's mask slipped entirely. You're really going to let Madison be humiliated because of your stubborn pride? I'm going to let Madison learn that actions have consequences, and that she can't treat people badly, and then expect them to fund her lifestyle. This isn't about her lifestyle, Miranda said. This is about honoring commitments you made to a minor child. I made no commitments to anyone, and even if I had, commitments are contingent on the other party meeting their obligation. Madison's obligation was to treat me with respect and include me as a valued family member. She failed to meet that obligation. So you're punishing a child for normal teenage behavior. I'm teaching a teenager that behavior has consequences, something her parents apparently failed to do. The insult landed exactly as I'd intended. Patricia's face flushed red, and Miranda's professional composure cracked. Mrs. Franklin, Miranda said, her voice icy, I think you're going to regret this decision. There are ways to challenge financial decisions made by elderly individuals, especially when those decisions seem vindictive or irrational. The threat was unmistakable. They were suggesting they might try to have me declared mentally incompetent if I didn't pay for Madison's party. Ladies, this conversation is over. You need to leave my property immediately. Mrs. Franklin, Patricia started. Immediately, I repeated, pulling out my phone. Or I call the police right now. They left, but not before Miranda handed me a business card and said, You'll be hearing from us again, Mrs. Franklin. I watched them drive away, my hands shaking with a combination of anger and adrenaline. The fact that they'd escalated to legal threats told me everything I needed to know about the kind of people I was dealing with. These weren't concerned parents trying to help their children. These were manipulative adults who were accustomed to getting their way through intimidation and coercion. I called Robert immediately. Mom, what's wrong? You sound upset. Robert, I just had a very disturbing visit from Patricia Chen and a woman named Miranda Walsh, who claims to be an attorney. What did they want? They threatened to sue me for not paying for Madison's party. They suggested I might be mentally incompetent, and they implied they might challenge my right to make my own financial decisions. There was a long silence. I repeated the conversation, including Miranda's threat about promissory estoppel, and her suggestion that my refusal to fund the party might indicate diminished capacity. Mom, they can't do that. You have every right to decide how to spend your own money. I know that, and you know that, but apparently they think they can intimidate me into compliance. Do you want me to call them, tell them to back off? No, Robert. I want you to understand that this situation has moved far beyond Madison's part. These people think they're entitled to my money, and they're prepared to use legal threats to get it. That's crazy. It's not crazy, it's calculated. They've done this before, Rob. They've found ways to pressure people into funding their children's lifestyles, and they assume I'll cave under pressure just like others have. What do you want to do? I want to make sure my financial affairs are completely protected. I want to document everything that's happened, and I want to make it very clear to Madison what kind of people she's been trying to impress. Do you think Madison knows about this? I don't know. But she needs to understand that Patricia isn't just planning parties, she's running some kind of operation, where other people's money funds her daughter's social status. That afternoon, I called Carol and asked her to schedule an emergency meeting. Bessie, what's going on? I explained the morning's visit and the legal threats. Oh my God, Carol said. Are you serious? They threatened to challenge your mental competency because you won't pay for a party. That's exactly what they did. Bessie, I need you to come in immediately. We need to document everything and make sure all your financial accounts are completely secure. An hour later, I was sitting in Carol's office, going through every detail of my financial situation. Bessie, your finances are completely in order, your investment decisions have been sound, and you're clearly of sound mind. Any attempt to challenge your competency would be frivolous and probably actionable as harassment. But they could still try, but they wouldn't succeed. However, let's take some preventive measures. I'm going to arrange for you to have a cognitive assessment done by a licensed psychologist, just to have documentation on file. I'm also going to prepare a comprehensive financial statement showing your decision-making history over the past several years. Is that necessary? It's protected. If anyone ever tries to challenge your competency, we'll have recent professional documentation proving you're fully capable of making your own decisions. What about the college fund? Is there any way they could claim Madison has a legal right to that money? Absolutely not. The account is in your name, with Madison as beneficiary. You have complete control over how and when the funds are distributed. Even if Madison were 18, you could change the beneficiary or withdraw the money entirely. Good, because I'm starting to think Madison might not be the only one who needs to learn about consequences. That evening, Madison called me crying. Grandma, something really weird happened today. Savannah's mom came to our house and had this big fight with Dad. She was yelling about contracts and money, and legal stuff. Dad wouldn't let me listen, but I could hear them through the door. What's going on? I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been dreading, but it was also necessary. Madison, Patricia came to my house this morning with an attorney. They threatened to sue me if I don't pay for your party.
The what? They claimed that I had made commitments to fund your party and that I was legally obligated to pay for expenses they'd already incurred. But that's crazy. You never promised anything. I know that, and you know that, but they seem to think they can intimidate me into paying anyway. Madison was quiet for a moment. Grandma, I think I've been really naive about Savannah's family. There have been some things that didn't make sense, but I ignored them because I wanted to fit in. What kind of things? Like Savannah's always talking about how her mom handles other parents, how she gets them to pay for things they don't want to pay for. And there have been other parties where kids' grandparents ended up paying for everything, even when the grandparents weren't really involved. My stomach dropped. Madison, are you telling me that Patricia has done this before? I think so. There was this girl last year, Emma Rodriguez, whose grandmother ended up paying for her quinceañera, even though she didn't want to. Emma said her mom felt pressured because of all the deposits that had already been made. And you didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I thought it was just how these things worked. Rich families help each other out, you know? But now that it's happening to us, it feels different. It feels wrong. Madison, what Patricia is doing isn't helping. It's manipulation. She's using social pressure and legal threats to get other people to fund her daughter's lifestyle. I'm starting to see that, Grandma. I don't want to be part of this anymore. I don't want my party to be paid for by threats and manipulation. What do you want to do? I want to plan something completely different. Something that doesn't involve Patricia or Savannah, or any of these people who think money and threats are more important than relationships. Are you sure, Madison? This might mean losing some friendship. If they're the kind of friendships that depend on expensive parties and impressing people, then maybe they're not worth keeping. I felt a surge of pride so strong it brought tears to my eyes. Madison, I am so proud of you for seeing this clearly. It's taken me a while to understand what you were trying to tell me, but I get it now. The people who really care about me will want to celebrate with me no matter where we have the party or how much money gets spent. Exactly. So can we start planning something new? Something that's really about celebrating my birthday instead of trying to impress people. I would love that. And Grandma, I want to invite Patricia and Savannah to the new party. I want them to see what a real celebration looks like when it's based on love instead of money. Are you sure that's wise? I'm sure it's necessary. They need to see that their way isn't the only way, and that there are people who value character over cash. The next morning brought another unexpected visitor, but this one was welcome. Dorothy knocked on my door carrying a casserole dish and wearing a grim expression. "Bessie, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine about your visitors yesterday. Patricia Chen has been making phone calls." "What kind of phone call?" "She's been telling people that you're having memory problems and making irrational financial decisions. She's suggesting that your family might need to step in and help manage your affairs." I felt my blood run cold. She's spreading rumors about my mental state. It gets worse. She's also been telling people that Madison's party situation is evidence that you're becoming unreliable and possibly need supervision. "Dorothy, she's trying to destroy my reputation to pressure me into paying for that party." "I know, and that's why I'm here. Bessie, you need to fight back. You can't let her spread lies about you without consequences." "What do you suggest?" "Document everything. Get statements from people who've witnessed her behavior, and consider talking to a lawyer about defamation." "I don't want to get into a legal battle. You may not have a choice." Patricia has escalated this beyond a simple disagreement about a party. She's attacking your character and your mental competency. If you don't fight back, she'll keep doing it to other people. That afternoon, I received a call from someone I hadn't expected to hear from. Emma Rodriguez's grandmother, Maria. "Mrs. Franklin, my name is Maria Rodriguez. I think we need to talk." "About what, Mrs. Rodriguez?" "About Patricia Chen and what she did to my family last year." We met for coffee that same day. Maria was a small, elegant woman in her 60s with intelligent eyes and calloused hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. "Mrs. Franklin, I heard through the school community that Patricia is targeting your family now. I wanted to warn you about what you're dealing with. Please, tell me everything." "Last year, my granddaughter Emma wanted a quinceañera. My son and daughter-in-law had budgeted $5,000 for the celebration, but Emma became friends with Savannah, and suddenly, she wanted something much more elaborate." "What happened?" "Patricia offered to help plan the party. She said she knew vendors, she could get better prices, she could make it really special." My family was grateful for the help, but Patricia made commitments without consulting us. She booked vendors, ordered decorations, arranged entertainment. When we objected to the costs, she said it was too late. Deposits had been made. Contracts had been signed. My heart sank. The same thing she tried to do to us. Exactly. But worse, when we still refused to pay, she started spreading rumors that our family was unreliable, that we didn't honor our commitments. She made it sound like we were bad people who were trying to cheat vendors. "What did you do?" "Eventually I paid. I couldn't stand the thought of Emma being humiliated, and I couldn't stand the rumors Patricia was spreading about our family. It cost me $15,000, money I had saved for my own medical expenses." "Maria, I'm so sorry. The worst part is that it didn't stop there. Since then, Patricia has treated our family like we owe her something. She expects us to support her various projects, to contribute to her causes, to be available when she needs help with events. She's using the fact that you paid as leverage for more demands." "Exactly. And Mrs. Franklin, I've learned that we're not the only family this has happened to. Patricia has perfected this system. She identifies families with elderly relatives who have money. She gets the teenagers excited about elaborate parties, and then she pressures the grandparents to pay through a combination of social manipulation and legal threats." I stared at Maria, feeling sick to my stomach. "How many families has she done this to?" "At least 5 that I know of directly, probably more. And no one has reported her." "Reported her for what?" "She's careful to stay within legal boundaries. She doesn't technically commit fraud. She just creates situations where people feel they have no choice but to pay. But that's extortion. It's manipulation. And unless someone is willing to stand up to her publicly, she'll keep doing it." "Maria, why are you telling me that?" "Because you're the first person I've heard of who said no and meant it. Everyone else has eventually given in. If you can hold your ground, maybe you can stop her from doing this to other families." "What would that require?" "Exposing her method, making sure other parents understand what she's really doing, and probably enduring some serious retaliation." I left my meeting with Maria, feeling both horrified and determined. Patricia wasn't just someone trying to fund her daughter's social life. She was running a systematic operation that targeted vulnerable families and used emotional manipulation to extract money from elderly relatives. That evening, I called a family meeting. Robert, Madison, and I sat around my kitchen table while I explained everything I'd learned. "So this isn't just about Madison's party," Robert said when I finished. "This woman has been doing this to multiple families, and she's gotten away with it because people are either too embarrassed to talk about it, or too afraid of the social consequences to fight back," I said. Madison looked pale and shaken. "Grandma, I feel awful. I helped her do this to you. I was part of her system." "Madison, you didn't know. You were manipulated just like the teenagers in all the other families, but I should have known. I should have seen that something was wrong when she started making all these arrangements without checking with you first. Sweetheart, Patricia is very good at what she does. She's had years of practice manipulating people." Robert leaned back in his chair, his face grim. "So what do we do now?" "We have a choice," I said. "We can try to stay quiet and hope Patricia moves on to easier targets, or we can fight back and try to stop her from doing this to other families." "What would fighting back look like?" Madison asked. "It would mean documenting everything, gathering statements from other families she's targeted, and possibly pursuing legal action for harassment and defamation. And it would mean dealing with serious retaliation." Robert added, "If this woman is as calculating as you say, she won't just accept defeat quietly." "Probably not, but if we don't fight back, she'll keep doing this to other families, and Madison will have to live with knowing that her party was the reason other grandparents got manipulated and threatened." Madison was quiet for a long moment. Finally she said, "I want to fight back. I don't want other kids to be used the way I was used, and I don't want other grandparents to be threatened the way you were threatened. Madison, it's going to be difficult. Patricia will probably try to turn your friends against you. She might spread rumors about our family. She might make school very unpleasant for you. I don't care. Well, I do care, but I think doing the right thing is more important than being popular." Robert nodded slowly. "I agree. We can't let this woman keep victimizing families." "All right then," I said. "Tomorrow we start fighting back." The next morning, I called Janet Morrison at the school. "Mrs. Morrison, I need to discuss something with you that goes beyond Madison's academic situation." "What's going on, Miss Franklin?" I explained everything about Patricia's operation, her threats, and what I'd learned from Maria Rodriguez. "Mrs. Franklin, this is very concerning. If what you're telling me is accurate, it suggests a pattern of behavior that could be considered predatory. What can the school do about it?" "Officially, very little, as long as no school rules are being broken. Unofficially, I can start paying closer attention to party planning situations and make sure parents are aware of their rights and options." "Would you be willing to speak with some of the other families who've been targeted?" "Absolutely. In fact, I think we might want to consider hosting a parent information session about party planning pressures and how to avoid manipulation." "That's a great idea. Miss Franklin, I want you to know that I admire what you're doing. It takes courage to stand up to someone like Patricia Chen." "I'm not doing it for courage. I'm doing it because it's right." That afternoon, Madison and I sat down to plan her new party. But this time, the planning felt completely different. Instead of trying to impress people or compete with other events, we focused on creating something meaningful and joyful. "What if we had a garden party theme?" Madison suggested. "We could use your backyard, decorate with flowers from your garden, maybe have a barbecue and lawn games." "That sounds lovely, and very achievable within a reasonable budget. Could we maybe ask people to bring a dish to share, like a potluck? That way it's about everyone contributing to the celebration instead of one person paying for everything." "Madison, that's a beautiful idea. And instead of hiring a DJ, maybe we could just make playlists and use a good sound system. Your grandfather and I hosted many wonderful parties with nothing more than a record player and speakers set up on the back porch. Could we make decorations together? Like actually spend time creating things instead of just buying everything." "I would love that." As we planned, I watched Madison transform before my eyes. The anxious, status-conscious teenager was disappearing, replaced by a thoughtful young woman who was genuinely excited about celebrating with people she cared about. "Grandma," she said as we finished making our initial plans, I want to do something else too. What's that? I want to use my birthday as a way to help other people. What if we asked for donations to a charity instead of gifts? Or what if we organized some kind of service project as part of the celebration? Madison, that's a wonderful idea. What kind of cause would you want to support? Something that helps elderly people who are being taken advantage. I keep thinking about all the grandparents who've been manipulated into paying for parties they couldn't afford. Maybe we could raise money for legal aid services or financial counseling. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Madison, I am so incredibly proud of the person you're becoming. I'm proud of you too, Grandma, for standing up to Patricia, for teaching me what really matters, for showing me that being brave is more important than being popular. You're going to make mistakes, sweetheart. We all do. The important thing is learning from them and choosing to do better. I want to do better, and I want other kids to see that there's a different way to think about celebrations and friendships, and what really matters in life. As I looked at my granddaughter, I realized that Patricia's manipulation had actually given us an unexpected gift. It had forced us to examine our values, strengthen our relationship, and commit to standing up for what was right. The battle with Patricia was far from over, but for the first time since this whole situation began, I felt like we were going to emerge stronger and better than before. And Madison's real sweet 16 celebration was going to be sweeter than any party money could buy. 3 weeks later, on a perfect Saturday afternoon in June, my backyard was transformed into something magical. Madison and I had spent countless hours together creating decorations from flowers in my garden, stringing lights between the old oak trees, and setting up tables borrowed from the community center. The smell of barbecue filled the air, and laughter echoed from every corner of the yard. But the most beautiful thing wasn't the decorations or the food. It was watching Madison move through the crowd of guests, genuinely happy and completely herself. She wore a simple sundress we'd found together at a local boutique, her hair adorned with flowers from my rose garden. She looked radiant in a way that had nothing to do with expensive clothes or professional styling. The guest list told the real story of transformation. Instead of the 100 teenagers Patricia had planned to impress, Madison had invited 30 people who actually mattered to her. Her close friends from school, a few family members, neighbors who'd watched her grow up, and surprisingly, several of the grandparents from families Patricia had previously targeted. Maria Rodriguez was there with her granddaughter Emma, and they'd brought 3 other families who wanted to show their support. Janet Morrison, Madison's guidance counselor, had also come. She spent most of the afternoon talking with the various grandparents about their experiences and taking notes for the parent education program she was developing. The most meaningful moment came when Madison stood up to address her guests. She'd asked me earlier if she could make a speech, and I'd agreed, though I had no idea what she planned to say. "Everyone," Madison called out, her voice carrying clearly across the garden, "I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate with me. But before we cut the cake, I want to talk about why this party is so special." The yard grew quiet, all eyes focused on my granddaughter. A few months ago, I was planning a very different kind of party. I was focused on impressing people, spending money, and trying to prove something about myself through how elaborate my celebration could be. I was so caught up in appearances that I almost lost sight of what really mattered. I felt tears prick my eyes as I watched Madison speak with confidence and sincerity. My grandmother saved money for years to help secure my future through education. Instead of being grateful for that incredible gift, I demanded she spend it on one night of showing off. I treated her like she existed only to fund my lifestyle, and I was prepared to exclude her from my own party because I was ashamed of her age. Several people in the crowd turned to look at me, their expressions ranging from surprise to admiration. But my grandmother did something brave. She said no. She refused to reward my selfish behavior, and she forced me to look at who I was becoming. It was the hardest and best lesson I've ever learned. Madison paused, wiping her eye. "This party costs a fraction of what I originally wanted to spend, but it's 100 times more meaningful. Everyone here is someone who genuinely cares about me, not someone I'm trying to impress. The decorations were made with love instead of purchased for show. And most importantly, my grandmother isn't just welcome here, she's honored here, because she's the most important person in my life."
The applause that followed was spontaneous and heartfelt. I saw several of the other grandparents wiping their eyes, and even some of Madison's teenage friends looked moved by her words. One more thing, Madison continued. We've set up a donation box for the Senior Legal Aid Society, which helps elderly people who are being taken advantage of financially. If you'd like to contribute, we'd be grateful, but your presence here is the only gift I really want. After her speech, Madison came over and hugged me tightly. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for loving me enough to teach me better. Thank you for being brave enough to learn, sweetheart. The afternoon continued with games, music, and the kind of genuine celebration that no amount of money could have purchased. I watched Madison play volleyball with her friends, help elderly guests find comfortable seating, and make sure everyone felt included. This was the granddaughter I'd always known she could be. Around sunset, as we were beginning to clean up, Patricia Chen's car pulled into my driveway. I tensed, wondering if she was planning another confrontation, but Madison surprised me by walking straight toward the car. I'll handle this, Grandma. Patricia got out of her car, dressed impeccably as always, her expression carefully neutral. Savannah emerged from the passenger side, looking uncomfortable and uncertain. Madison, Patricia said, her voice strained, I heard about your party. I wanted to stop by and congratulate you. Thank you, Madison replied calmly. Would you like to come see what we created? Patricia looked around the backyard, taking in the simple decorations, the potluck tables, the mix of ages among the guests. Her expression was difficult to read. It's very charming, she said finally. It's real, Madison corrected gently. Patricia, I want you to know that I understand now what you were trying to do with my original party plans, and I want you to know that it stops here. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. I've learned about the other families, the other grandparents who were pressured into funding parties they never agreed to support. I've learned about the legal threats and the manipulation. Savannah looked shocked, turning to stare at her mother. Mom, what is she talking about? Patricia's face hardened. Madison, I think you've been listening to some very biased stories. I've been listening to the truth. And here's what's going to happen going forward. If I hear about you pressuring any other families, the way you pressured mine, I will personally make sure everyone in our school community knows exactly what you're doing. You wouldn't dare try me, Madison said quietly. I've learned that being popular isn't worth compromising your integrity, and I've learned that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Madison's demeanor must have convinced her that the threat was real. Savannah, Madison continued, turning to her former friend, you're welcome to stay and see what a real celebration looks like, but only if you want to be here for the right reasons. Savannah looked between her mother and Madison, clearly struggling with conflicting loyalties. I think I'd like to stay for a little while, she said finally. Patricia's expression turned cold. Savannah, we need to leave. Now, Mom, maybe I should see what Madison's talking about. Maybe I should understand what's been happening. Get in the car, Savannah. For a moment I thought Savannah might stand up to her mother, but after a few seconds of tense silence, she got back in the car. Patricia turned back to Madison. You have no idea what you're messing with, young lady. Yes, I do. I'm messing with someone who preys on families and uses children to manipulate their grandparents, and I'm not afraid of you anymore. Patricia drove away without another word, leaving Madison standing in my driveway looking shaken but resolute. Are you okay, sweetheart? I asked, putting my arm around her. I'm better than okay. I'm free. The following Monday brought news that I hadn't expected but probably should have. Janet Morrison called to tell me that Patricia had lodged a formal complaint with the school district, claiming that Madison and I were spreading malicious rumors and that I was an unstable influence on Madison's education. Miss Franklin, I want you to know that the administration is taking this complaint seriously, but not in the way Patricia probably hoped. What do you mean? I mean that when someone files a complaint like this immediately after being confronted about their own behavior, it tends to validate the accusations rather than discredit them. The principal has asked me to document everything you've told me, and to reach out to other families who might have had similar experiences. So Patricia's complaint actually backfired, complete. She's also made the mistake of putting her threats in writing, which gives us documentation of harassment that we didn't have before. 3 days later, the The local newspaper ran a story titled, "Community Parents Raise Concerns About Party Planning Pressure." The article, written by a reporter whose own mother had been targeted by Patricia, detailed the systematic way certain parents were manipulating elderly relatives into funding elaborate celebrations. The story didn't name Patricia directly, but it quoted several families anonymously, and included a sidebar about warning signs of financial manipulation targeting seniors. It also mentioned the success of Madison's alternative celebration as an example of how meaningful events could be created without financial pressure. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Janet Morrison received calls from dozens of parents sharing their own experiences, and the Senior Legal Aid Society reported a surge in requests for information about protecting elderly relatives from manipulation. 2 weeks after the newspaper article, I received a call from an investigator with the State Attorney General's office. "Mrs. Franklin, we've received multiple complaints about fraudulent party planning practices in your area. Would you be willing to provide a statement about your experience?" The investigation that followed was thorough and careful. Investigators interviewed more than 20 families and documented a clear pattern of predatory behavior. While Patricia had been careful to stay within legal boundaries, her actions constituted a form of financial elder abuse that warranted both criminal charges and civil liability. The legal proceedings took months, but the social consequences were immediate. Patricia found herself ostracized from the very community circles she'd worked so hard to dominate. Families began avoiding her events, and her influence evaporated almost overnight. Savannah, freed from her mother's manipulation, gradually reconnected with Madison. It took time for them to rebuild trust, but watching them work through their friendship taught me valuable lessons about forgiveness and growth. 6 months later, Madison's grades had not only recovered but improved dramatically. She'd thrown herself into her studies with the same intensity she'd once devoted to social climbing, and her teachers reported a complete transformation in her attitude and work ethic. "Grandma," she said one evening as we worked together in my garden, "I've been thinking about college." "What about it?" "I want to study social work. I want to help families who are being taken advantage of, especially elderly people who are being pressured by their own relatives." I felt my heart swell with pride. "Madison, that's a wonderful goal. Do you think there's still enough in the college fund to make that possible?" I smiled, thinking about the account that had grown substantially during the months when Madison was proving herself through her choices rather than her demands. "I think we can make it work, sweetheart. I think we can make it work very well." As we knelt together among the roses, Madison working to pull weeds while I guided her hands to avoid the thorns, I realized that this garden was the perfect metaphor for what we'd been through together. Growth required careful tending, patience, and sometimes the courage to prune away what wasn't healthy, but with love, attention, and the right conditions, even the most damaged plants could bloom again. The college fund was intact, Madison's future was secure, and our relationship was stronger than it had ever been, but more importantly, we'd learned that the most valuable gifts couldn't be bought with money. They had to be earned through character, nurtured through respect, and shared through genuine love. Patricia's attempt to manipulate our family had backfired spectacularly, but not because we'd sought revenge. It had backfired because we'd chosen truth over convenience, character over comfort, and love over fear. Those choices had transformed not just Madison and me, but everyone whose lives we'd touched along the way. The real Sweet 16 gift hadn't been a party at all. It had been the gift of learning who we really were, and who we wanted to become, and that gift would last far longer than any celebration ever could. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.